Welcome to the Climate Report. I'm Hart Hagen, your host, and this is episode 13. We're going to talk about plants, animals, ecosystems, and what does all that have to do with climate. This is Forward Radio, WFMP-FM Louisville. We are listener-supported radio, and the reason that's important is that we are free from corporate influence. We can say what we want in our reporting and in our commentary, and we do not have to worry about what the corporate interests think about what we say. So we can give you news and commentary that is objective, that is hard-hitting, that pulls no punches. To keep listener-supported radio on the air, you can go to forwardradio.org and click Donate. A monthly donation of $5 to $10 or a one-time donation of $20, $30, $40 would be very helpful in keeping Forward Radio on the air so that we can be your objective source of news and commentary. So today's topic is plants, animals, and ecosystems, and what does all that have to do with climate? Well, we know that the leading cause of CO2 emissions, so climate change is caused by too much carbon dioxide, too much CO2 in the air. The leading cause of carbon dioxide is emissions from our automobiles and our power plants, from the burning of fossil fuels. But the second leading cause of carbon dioxide is deforestation. So we'll talk about how deforestation causes carbon dioxide, too much carbon dioxide. Conversely, when we reforest, when we let trees grow, trees and plants, when we let them grow, then they absorb carbon from the atmosphere. So that's only one of several really good reasons why we should be attentive to our plants, our animals, our ecosystems, which starts with our native plants and our native trees. So what is the situation such as it is? What kind of situation do we have now? Because if we know what it's like now, then we can work toward solving the problem. So one part of the problem is that people are out of touch with nature. And I'm not talking about having a woo-woo spiritual relationship with nature. I'm talking about we don't know how nature works. We learn in school about the food chain and energy comes from the sun and it shines on the plants, and there's photosynthesis, and the plants grow and the animals eat the plants, and some animals eat other animals, and then there's other animals that decompose all that. And we learn that, but it's not actionable. There's nothing we can do about it. So that's why we need to learn how native plants, not plants from halfway around the world or even halfway across the continent, but plants that are native to our region are the plants that we need, and that's how ecosystems get started. There's very little public awareness about this, and that's why we're talking about it. So another issue in this assessment is that not only are we out of touch with nature and don't understand how it works, we also don't realize how much we depend on nature. So in this episode, we'll be talking about the different ways in which we depend on nature. We also don't know how to tell when nature is broken. We want to be able to look around us and say, and identify, okay, what's working here and what's not working so well at all, and that way we can work toward a solution. After the show, you may start to look at many human activities differently, such as landscaping, all the grass. We have grass for days, and we have green lawns, which are sometimes the most unhealthy lawns because they're drenched with chemicals. But even a lawn that's not drenched with chemicals is devoid of habitat for wildlife. When I say wildlife, I'm talking about bees, butterflies, and birds. I'm not talking about a grizzly bear coming in to devour you. I'm talking about the bees, butterflies, birds, these are the small things that make a big difference, the small things that are really the essential components of the ecosystems around us. So you may start to see look around you and see some things differently, including landscaping, including highways, including like agribusiness. Like on this show, we talk about some of the politics of how the United States treats other countries, and you might start to think, wow, I'm not sure if we ought to go into Haiti or Nicaragua or Brazil and tell them that they ought to do large scale farming, because that can be a problem ecologically. So why do we need thriving ecosystems? Or we do need thriving ecosystems around us. So when you look around you, uh, okay, so human beings take up a lot of space in this world, and we're continuing to take up more and more space. And as we do that, the the animals and plants that are needed to form healthy, thriving ecosystems are in precipitous decline, and that's why the mass extinction, an extinction crisis. We are in an extinction crisis now. Some people say it is the sixth great extinction. There have been 5 great extinction events that have occurred in the history of Earth. The last one, 65 million years ago, was when the dinosaurs went extinct because a meteor hit the Earth, so the theory goes. But for some reason, dinosaurs went extinct about 65 million years ago, and that made way for small mammals to thrive, and those were our ancestors, and now here we are. But that takes a lot of time. But that 5th great extinction that killed the dinosaurs was a natural event. It was not a man-made event. Now we have a man-made or a human-caused extinction. We have, animals are going extinct at 800 or 900 times, plants and animals, going extinct at a rate of 800 or 900 times the normal rate. And that is a problem. We are in a dramatic and rapid extinction event, and it is, between climate change and the extinction crisis, those are 2 of the 3 things that pose a serious threat to the survival of the human race. So we need to talk about this, and we need to pull no punches. So the fact is that we need thriving ecosystems. Humans are part of nature. For example, when plants give us oxygen. Every breath you take, you can thank the plant life that is around us. And if the plant life dies off, then we don't have any source of oxygen. So we need healthy, thriving plants. In order to have healthy, thriving plants, we need pollinators. Pollinators consist of bees and butterflies, some birds, some bats. Sometimes wind is a pollinator, but most pollinators are bees and butterflies, and bees and butterflies are like every other living thing. They need food, water, some form of shelter, and they need a toxin-free environment. And we, in many instances, are not giving bees and butterflies a toxin-free environment, nor are we giving them enough food. Therefore, pollinators are in precipitous decline. Therefore, so we need plants, we need pollinators, we need thriving ecosystems. So some of the components of thriving ecosystems include native plants, includes pollinators, includes lots of insects. We need to not be so creeped out about insects. Insects are important to human life. We should stop killing insects, and we should start creating habitat for insects to live on. So if human beings are to survive and thrive, we need plants, for one thing, because plants are the foundation of a good ecosystem. And ecosystems operate locally. It's not about what's going on the other side of the planet. It's about what we are doing locally. So plants perform the following services for us. This is why we need plants, and the right plants. Plants make oxygen. through the photosynthesis process. Plants clean water. Plants provide for clean water. One of the reasons we don't have very clean water in some of our streams and waterways is because we don't have enough plants next to the waterways to absorb the water before it goes into the streams. Plants prevent erosion. Plants hold topsoil. There's a big crisis worldwide about topsoil because we're not doing a good job at preventing erosion and keeping our topsoil where it needs to be. Plants prevent floods. Trees prevent floods. When the rain falls, the worst thing that can happen to a raindrop is for it to go rushing into the stream. The best, because it's just pushing polluted, dirty water down the stream. We need for that raindrop to be held closer to the source through rain gardens, rain barrels, or just trees and forests. Trees and forests absorb water so that it can evaporate back into the air and cause more frequent rainfall. So we need, these are among the services that plants and trees provide. Plants and trees buffer extreme weather events. Plants and trees sequester carbon, especially trees. Sequester means to hide, like when a jury goes into sequestration, they're hiding. Plants sequester carbon. Plants absorb carbon from the air as long as we allow them to grow, especially long-living trees. We need as many long-living, 100-year-old deciduous trees so that they can absorb carbon from the air. But when we develop too much and we deforest, the exact opposite happens. And when we deforest for roads and for shopping centers and for farmland, whether it's here or whether it's in other countries, that is causing a release of carbon into the air. Plus, at the very time when we should be allowing forests to grow, we're cutting down way too many of them. And it's not just the rainforests in South America. It is the forests right here in North America that we need to be taking care of. It's both. It's not either or, it's both. But we don't need to be pointing the finger at other countries for cutting down their forests when we're doing exactly the same thing for many of the same reasons. It's a short-sightedness, and it has to do with greed and self-indulgence. Another thing that plants do for us is that plants make animals. Now, plants don't actually make animals, but plants provide food for animals. Plants provide food for pollinators. Plants provide food for butterflies. Plants provide food for bees, if they are the right plants, but they need to be the right plants. The right plants are native plants. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So let me give you one relevant stat. This was based on an extremely extensive study that determined that the dollar value of ecosystem services, so ecosystems provide us services, pollination services and agricultural, clean air, clean water, and food production. Ecosystems provide services, and those services, there's a dollar value to those services. It was determined that between 1960 and 2000, the dollar value of ecosystem services declined by 60%. 60% between 1960 and 2000. Of course, 2000 was 18 years ago. We have no reason to believe that trend has reversed and gone in the right direction. We have every reason to believe that trend is still going in the wrong direction. So we've got a serious situation here that we need to fix, and we need to have fun doing it, because we're not going to fix anything unless we have fun in the process. The great news is that we now have information that we didn't have even 3 years ago. We have information about how to create great ecosystems. If you're in the continental United States then you can know what are the best native plants for your county based on how many leaf-eating insects they support. So the funky thing that I won't go too much into is that caterpillars are, who'd have thought, caterpillars are a key to so much else. But as it turns out, the plants that support the most caterpillars are also the plants that support a lot else, because caterpillars are leaf-eating insects. There are other leaf-eating insects. If we can take care of the leaf-eating insects, then we'll also take care of the pollinators and all other insects. If we take care of insects, then we take care of birds and everything else. It really gets down to what plants are the best at providing food for the native insects that are used to eating them. For example, oak is number one in most of the United States, if not all. Oak is number one, top of the list, the most valuable plant. It has to be a native oak. But if you have an oak, then if it's in Jefferson County, Louisville, where I am, same applies to much of Kentucky, it will support something on the order of 400 different species of caterpillars, including the spiny oak. You ready for some cool names? Spiny oak slug, the two-spotted oak punky, the variable oak leaf caterpillar, the red-humped oak worm, the pink-striped oak worm, the epilated dagger moth, the lesser oak dagger moth, the greater oak dagger moth, the streaked dagger moth, the afflicted dagger moth, the white-blotched heterocampa, the oblique heterocampa, the redline panapoda, and the laugher. So that's a lot of caterpillars, but the point is that it takes a lot of caterpillars to support birds, especially when they are reproducing. If you don't have the native plants that support the caterpillars that provide bird food in the spring when the birds are reproducing, then birds don't reproduce. And guess what happens when birds don't reproduce? Their populations go down, and bird populations continue to go down because they don't have enough food, and they don't have enough food because we're not planting enough of the right plants for them. So, to recap what we've talked about so far, the Earth is in crisis in like 3 different ways. One of those 3 different ways is the extinction crisis, the extinction of species. The way to deal with the extinction crisis, for one thing, stop and reverse climate change, but for another thing, locality by locality, we need to fix our ecosystems. Acre by acre, square mile by square mile, we need to fix our ecosystems. And in order to do that, we need to know how. The way to fix our ecosystems categorically is to know what native plants to plant. And if I told you nothing else in this episode, and if you remembered nothing more in this episode, I want you to remember the following link, and it's called the Native Plant Finder. It is on the website of the National Wildlife Federation. The URL, or the link, is nwf.org/native plant finder. That's nwf.org/native plant finder. And then you type in your zip code, and that way you get a list of the best plants in your locality for supporting ecosystems. If you did nothing else but took that information and applied it and planted some things and planted the right things and get rid of the wrong things, then we will be far along toward doing our part to solve the extinction crisis. So in order to stop the extinction crisis and start going in the right direction, one of the things we need to do most is to stop deforesting and start reforesting. We need to stop cutting down trees, and we need to plant trees, and they need to be the best trees. So what makes some trees better than others? So what makes a tree ecologically healthy? What is the measure of the ecological benefit of a tree. Can ecological benefit be measured? Whoever thought that you could actually measure the ecological benefit of a tree without having a degree in ecology? But you can. Now, is that measurement complicated, or is that measurement simple and easy? So it's not hard, but you need to know that the answer lies in the food chain. So we know the food chain in theory, but do we know the food chain in enough detail for our knowledge to be actionable, so that we know the actions that we need to take to fix the food chains so we can fix the extinction crisis? So in order to fix the extinction crisis, we need to know that some trees are better than others. Some trees are good, some trees are bad, and some trees are kind of meh, not terribly good, not terribly bad. So, for example, an oak tree is better than a redbud tree. Now, a redbud is a wonderful tree, don't get me wrong, but an oak tree is much, much better. And a redbud is infinitely superior to a Bradford pear. So you have a very good tree, a bad tree, and one in the middle. Similarly, a native blueberry bush is better than a hydrangea. But a hydrangea is infinitely superior to a burning bush, because burning bush is a bad plant in our area. Native blueberry bush is a very good plant. Hydrangea is in the middle. Not terribly good or terribly bad. I mean, it's good. It's a good plant. It's just, not as high on the scale as a native blueberry bush. And this is the information that you're going to find out if you go to the Native Plant Finder at nwf.org/native plant finder. Another example, a river birch is better than a catalpa tree. A catalpa tree is not a bad tree. It's a good tree, and in fact, a catalpa tree is infinitely superior to a tree of heaven, because a tree of heaven is a very bad tree because it comes from Asia, and it is not native to our ecosystems. It does not support our caterpillars and other insects, and in fact it's invasive, so it's bad. Invasive means it kills off our native plants, and therefore it deprives our insects of a meal. And if you deprive our insects of a meal, their populations go down, and so it's a ripple effect. Everything else goes down with it. So what's the measure? What's the yardstick for what is a good tree? So here's the assumption. A tree that provides food for 200 species of caterpillars is better than a tree that supports 50 caterpillars. And a tree that provides food for 50 species of caterpillars is better than a tree that provides food for 10 species of caterpillars. So, so not all native plants are equal in their ability to support caterpillars. Oaks are great. Native willows are great. Birch trees are great. Native plums and cherries are great. Hickories are great. Chestnut is great. Elm is great. Pine is great if it's a native pine. Maple is great if it's a native maple. So this is the information that you can find out if you go to nwf.org/native plant finder, and also you can I have a list called the top 100 plants. Contact me for that list, and I'd be happy to send it to you. So in my region, oak trees. Okay, we're talking about oak trees now. Oak trees support 346 species of caterpillars, and redbuds only support 18. So here's a stat for you. So we need oaks because they're number one. We need willows because they're number 3. We need plums and cherries because they're number 2. We need birch because it's number 4. If we had enough of the top 17 plants in our area, that would be a very, very, very good thing, because the top 17 is the top 5%, and it's been shown that if we have the top 5%, then that will support 75% of our insects. But they have to be the top 17 trees. They have to be the top 5%. So you can get a good list not only of the top 17 plants, but also the top 100 by typing in bit.ly/top 100 plants. That's bit.ly/top 100 plants, top 100 plants. And here is a list of the top 10 in Louisville. Number 1, oak trees. They have to be native, but oak trees are number 1. Native plums and cherry trees are number 2, such as the American plum and the black cherry. Native willows are number 3, like the prairie willow or the Missouri River willow. Birch trees are number 4, like the river birch. Native maple trees are number 5, like the sugar maple or the water maple. Number 6, hickory trees, including the shagbark hickory and the shellbark hickory. Number 7, poplar trees, including the cottonwood tree. Native pine trees are number 8 or 9, lost count, including the white pine. And elm trees, including the American elm, round out the list. So those are the top few trees. The point is that not all trees are equal. You need to deal with a person who in your area can tell you reliably what are the best native plants. And honestly, I don't know very many people who are qualified. You can contact me if you would like more information on that. So, no matter what you do, it's important to plant natives, because native plants are what our native insects eat. But it's because here's the reason for that. Plants don't want their leaves to be eaten, so they load their leaves with toxic chemicals that keep their leaves from being eaten. That's why leaves taste bad. Most leaves taste bad to you and me. Some are poisonous, some are have deadly poisons in them. But a few insects have evolved to eat each different type of leaf. A few insects have evolved to be immune to the chemicals that are in each leaf. And that's why leaf-eating insects are very specialized, and that's why you have to have a diversity of native plants, so that you can have a diversity of insects, so that you can then have a diversity and abundance of the things that eat insects, which include birds and small mammals and reptiles, such as turtles and lizards, and everything eats insects. Insects are absolutely the key to unlocking the food chain. They are absolutely the keystone in between plants and the rest of an ecosystem. That's about all we have time for. Thanks for joining me. Episode after next, we will talk more about native plants and ecosystems.